Hey guys, so I wanted to make an updated video today because I've had so many members in the group ask me about my story, and they're shocked to find out that I too had a very serious chronic illness and was able to get out of it and get completely back to normal and lead my old life again. So I promised that I would make a video and chronicle my whole journey. So those of you that know and have been following the group for a while, I am a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for over 22 years. And about 10 to 15 years ago, I branched off into functional medicine. It is just something that I'm very passionate about. I absolutely love functional medicine. And it's very fitting too, because I grew up in a very holistic Ayurvedic style home. And we practiced very, lifestyle natural medicine at home. And so even though I was trained in the physical therapy world, in Western medicine, I have always gravitated towards functional medicine. And so that's where all my certifications and training is. And then I did all my courses through Institute of Functional Medicine. And that's what really I've been doing at least for over 10 years. I was always a very clean eater, ate very healthy, vegetarian, organic lifestyle. Of course, wine, in college and early adulthood, but overall have been a very healthy, holistic person. I have been exercising, I think since I was 17 years old. I'm a very fitness fanatic, always exercised, always ate healthy, stayed healthy, meditated, practiced a very holistic lifestyle, if you may. But about 6 or 7 years ago, we went through a very stressful time in our lives. And I thought that it would just pass. I thought that once everything ended, I would just get better. But in fact, after it ended, I started getting sicker. I started having a lot of fatigue and a lot of exhaustion, lack of energy, motivation, and brain fog. And I started having increased urinary frequency. My hormones were out of whack. And so I went to see my primary care physician. And right off the bat, she wrote me off. She said I was a very healthy patient, that I was just exhausted from being a mom of 3 kids and working and building this home. And so really it was just, a cumulative effect, and that I needed to kind of take a step back in my life and just kind of slow down was her answer. But she said, overall I was a very healthy person. At the time I was on some basic supplements like vitamin D, omegas, vitamin B12. I was on some very basic supplements, and she made me stop. She said, you don't know what's in those supplements, and the fillers or something were probably not working with you, so just stop those supplements, even though I was using very clean and organic supplements. So I went ahead and listened to her, and I stopped. And she had asked me to come back to see her in 6 months. And 4 months later, I was calling her office, begging to be seen. And when I went in, I was practically crawling in. I could barely at that point empty a dishwasher, carry a grocery bag into the house, just really weak, barely functioning. And I said all this to her. And she again dismisses me and says, Zankna, you're one of my healthiest patients. All my patients drink 5 to 6 cans of Coke a day. You eat super clean, you're super healthy, you exercise. There's nothing wrong with you. She completely wrote me off. Not a single piece of blood work, no tests, nothing to see what could potentially be the problem with me. And at the time I was 40 years old, so you would think, hormonal issues. She just didn't check anything. The only thing, I had to push her because I was having so much urinary frequency, and she said, fine, go see a urogynecologist. So I went to see a urogynecologist, and they had me keep a diary of how much fluid I was taking in and how much, output I was having. Did an ultrasound, found nothing wrong with me except seriously increased urinary frequency, and they were like, there's nothing wrong with you. And that started my cascade then of the multitude of subspecialists that I saw at 2 different institutions. I ended up seeing 2 different hepatologists, 2 different OBGYNs, 2 different rheumatologists, 2 different endocrinologists at each institution, and even 2 different neurologists, just trying to get a second opinion because everybody gave me the clean bill of health. They said there was nothing wrong with me, and I was barely functioning. I could barely, at that point, there was a 4 or 5 month period where I was completely bedridden, barely able to get out of bed, and they just they said nothing was wrong with me. The rheumatologist and the neurologist both tried to put me on antidepressants, which I told them, I'm not against antidepressants, but with all due respect, I don't need antidepressants. I am not physically feeling well. This has nothing to do with my mental, emotional state. And they said, no, you need, antidepressants. And luckily I put my foot down on that. And I said I wasn't going to do antidepressants, at least at this time. And so it ended up being where I was just very, very sick, had no answers. It was the beginning of the pandemic at that point. And so luckily none of my friends were seeing me. From a social perspective, I was just at home pretty much. And so no one really knew how ill I was and how non-functional I was, and was just trying stuff at home. And then at the recommendation of a friend, I went to see an acupuncturist. And the acupuncturist then said to me, did a whole bunch of evaluations and muscle testing and things like that. And she was the first person to say to me that I had adrenal fatigue. And she said that I was pretty far advanced in adrenal fatigue. She called it stage 3 or 4 adrenal fatigue, and that she would start treating me. And so she started treating me, and I got a little bit better over the course of 5-6 months, but still nothing where I could even walk down the driveway, walk the dogs, or anything like that. I was just a little bit more functional with the kids around the house and, helping with homeschooling and things like that at that point, because we were in the full swing of the pandemic. But that was about it. And so then I reached out to an adrenal fatigue specialist, and I reached out to my dear friend. Because of the functional medicine world, I had all the connections. I reached out to one of my dearest friends who's a naturopathic doctor, and he ended up putting me on a whole bunch of supplements for not only adrenal fatigue, but he was addressing a lot of parasites and mineral imbalances and a bunch of things that he was working on. I did 7 liver cleanses in that year, things like that, and I got better a little bit, but really again, the brain fog, the fatigue, the inability to function, I just wasn't getting there. And then I decided, I was going to go ahead and see a functional medicine specialist, and I started working with a functional medicine specialist for that whole year. And she did a gamut of testing, from blood work to urine, salivary, gut testing. She tested my gut, she did stool testing, and she made a comment that I may have CIRS, CIRS, which is chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And so ended up working with a CIRS specialist for 6 months, went through that whole gamut of CIRS treatment for 6 months, and still wasn't getting better. And at that point in that year and a half, I had done every treatment out there. Ozone, I was doing coffee enemas, I was doing red light therapy, I was doing hyperbaric oxygen, I was doing IVs, PEMF. I had gotten every treatment pretty much under the sun, including the 6-month CIRS protocol, and nothing was getting me better. And so at that point is when I decided that I was going to take matters in my own hands, using all these tools that I was already, my functional medicine tools. I was already using all these treatment methods on a day-to-day basis. I was doing 4 to 5 treatments a day of different modalities, and all these treatments in a week, and saunas, and really, really detoxing. I did maybe 4 or 5 more liver cleanses. This whole thing went on for over 2 years. And that's when I said, I'd had enough. I told my husband I was going to fall back on my Ayurvedic and functional medicine roots. In my culture, we use water-only fasting more as a religious thing. But I told my husband, don't think I'm jumping on the next bandwagon. I am going to do a 7-day water-only fast. And I knew for someone like me, who at that point had adrenal fatigue, who was completely bedridden, really struggling to I couldn't even miss one meal or go 2 hours without really having to refuel, that I was going to do a water-only fast. And like I said, I told my husband, don't think I'm jumping on the next bandwagon. I just have to do this because I have to heal my gut. I have to reset my immune system. I have to heal my adrenals. I have to heal my vagus nerve. reset my HPA axis, and so I decided I was just going to do a water-only fast. And so I had a friend who's a DO down in West Palm. He said he would keep an eye on me, and I basically rented a hotel room, and I went and did a 7-day water-only fast. And I took video along every day of the water-only fast, which will be on the channel as well. But it was sheer death. Like, it was the most toughest thing I've ever done in my life, and very, very difficult to do. Luckily, again, I was being monitored by one of my really good friends who's a DO, and he monitored me for those 7 days. But it took me almost 5 days to get into ketosis. I was feeling beyond sick, headaches, just really, really hungry, shaky, cold. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And I did the water-only fast for 7 days. And when I went back home, I started seeing a difference. I saw a huge change. I think within the first month after the water-only fast, I was 60% better. I was functioning more. I started walking the dogs again. The brain fog was gone. I just started getting better. So it was a complete pivotal point and a game changer for me to do the water-only fast, but I was only 60% better. And the other 40% was just not coming back. And what was not coming back was my ability to exercise. If I still exercised, I would still crash. I would be bedridden for a day or two. I could walk the dogs. I had started walking the dogs for about 10 minutes a day, but really that's about it. If I pushed myself or even tried to do a little bit of a run or lift weights, I was bedridden. So that 40% was just not coming back. And again, through my contacts, through friends, I had someone recommend to me that, hey, why don't you try using these phototherapy patches? And I was like, what are these phototherapy patches? And they said, well, I now call them acupuncture to go, where you basically stick these patches on the meridians of your body, kind of like acupuncture. So I call it acupuncture to go. But these phototherapy patches have liquid crystal in them. And what that does is it kind of reflects your own body's infrared light from within you. And in doing so, it helps produce peptides. It helps produce GHK, Cu, copper peptides to really start healing the body. And I said, okay, well, at this point, I'd tried everything, right? I was already 60% better, taking care of the kids and everything again, cooking again, household stuff, walking the dogs. I just wanted to get back to exercising and be my old self again. I was still leading a very restrictive lifestyle with my diet and being very clean of an eater and what I was eating and things like that. And so I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And it took me almost 3 months before I could even tolerate the patches. I was doing very simple protocols for inflammation, a little bit of in vagus nerve, HPA axis protocols, but it took me almost 3 to 4 months that I could tolerate the patches. But I was determined and motivated to not give up on these patches. I knew that they were a game changer, that they had helped hundreds and thousands of people, and that if I could just start tolerating them and not detoxing, because I had a lot of sensitivity still, then I would do so much better. And so I ended up at least 3 to 4 months. There was a time in between for a week I gave up another week, 3 months later, but I just kept going back to the patches. And after 4 months, it was like a complete game changer. Because I teach my patients, and I'm really a proponent of the HPA axis, especially when you have a chronic illness, I really wanted to be able to tolerate the vagus nerve protocol. And so what it is you put a specific patch behind the left ear where the vagus nerve is, you put a patch behind the right ear where the vagus nerve is, and then you put one patch on your C7, like on the back of your neck. And that one really just helps with inflammation and calming everything down. And by month 4, I was sleeping amazing through the night. It doubled my REM sleep, doubled my deep sleep, and I started exercising. Within 4 months, I was exercising again, lifting weights, walking the dogs in the morning, doing a fasted cardio, and then lifting weights after breakfast, and working out 6 days a week. I was doing high intensity yoga, hot yoga, and power flow. I was just back to normal. So the whole journey took over 4 years. Year one was just wasted being sick and going through all these subspecialists and, specialties, trying to get things figured out. No one could figure me out. I had had so many brain scans and liver ultrasound and gallbladder ultrasound and all this testing done with my functional medicine doctor then. And, of course, it helped to kind of see that things were off, but I just couldn't get the inflammatory load down. When my functional medicine doctor had first done my blood work, my inflammatory markers were 4 times what they should normally be. So I was in a state of inflammation. But like I said, for me, the pivotal point and the game-changing point was the fast. The 7-day water-only fast was a complete game changer. And that got me 60% of my health back. And then I started doing the patches, and these patches were a complete game changer. So it's been over at least 3 years since I've been patching, and my family and I have completely stopped using over-the-counter medication. Not that I'm against it, we just end up patching for any kind of issues or symptoms that we may have, from headaches to exhaustion, inflammation, ankle sprains, viruses, cold. I just end up patching, and so that's been the biggest game changer for me. So I wanted to share my story. Obviously, I put it in a quick 15-minute snapshot for you, but it was a long, arduous journey for over 4 years. And, obviously I gave you a very Cliff Notes version, but I was doing every single treatment out there that you could potentially think of. Immune modulators, trying to heal my gut. Like I said, I was doing, all kinds of sauna and infrared and ozone therapy and PEMF and hyperbaric oxygen. I got so many treatments of that. Try to heal my mitochondrial health. I was getting IVs for years, all different kind of IVs. I must have been on hundreds and hundreds of supplements. And so if there's anything that now when I work with my clients, I take them from being completely sick to being completely healed. I really incorporate a lot of these techniques, from intermittent fasting to fasting. And then really the bulk of my focus is using the patches for the HPA axis vagus nerve. So thanks guys, that's my story. And I hope that it helps someone else out there.